The transport ship shook as it entered the atmosphere of Krell 4. Inside the cargo bay, 12 beings from 12 different worlds sat in silence. Each one was the finest warrior their planet could offer. Each one had trained their entire life for this moment. Each one knew that most of them would fail. Corporal Han Day sat in the corner seat, his eyes closed. He was small compared to the others. At just under 6 feet tall and weighing barely 200 pounds, he looked like a child next to the massive aliens around him. The Veshtar warrior across from him stood 9 feet tall, with scales like armor plating. The Quiloth champion beside him had 4 arms, each one capable of crushing steel. Even the smallest of the other candidates was larger and stronger than Day. He didn't mind. Size had never been his advantage. The ship's speakers crackled to life. "Candidates, we are approaching the testing facility. Prepare for landing." Day opened his eyes and looked around. Some of the aliens were checking their natural weapons. Claws extended and retracted. Poison glands swelled and deflated. One candidate, a being made of living crystal, was vibrating at a frequency that made the metal floor hum. They were all preparing to fight. Day simply stretched his legs and took a deep breath. The transport landed with a heavy thud. The cargo door opened, and harsh white light flooded in. A figure stood in the doorway, backlit and imposing. As Day's eyes adjusted, he saw it was an ancient being, its skin like old leather, its eyes like deep pools of knowledge. "I am Overseer Vel," the being said. Its voice echoed in ways that shouldn't be possible. "Welcome to Krell 4. Welcome to the Predator test." The candidates filed out of the transport. They stood in a large chamber made of smooth black stone. The walls were covered with symbols from 1,000 different worlds. In the center of the room was a holographic display showing a rotating planet covered in green jungles, red deserts, blue oceans, and white mountains. For 10,000 years, the Galactic Council has used this test to judge the worth of new species. "Overseer," Vel continued, "every species that wishes to join our ranks must prove they can survive, not just in their homeworld, but anywhere, against anything." The hologram zoomed in on the planet's surface. Day could see creatures moving through the jungles. Large creatures, fast creatures, deadly creatures. "Krell 4 is home to apex predators from every corner of the galaxy," Vel said. "We have gathered the most dangerous hunters, the most efficient killers, the most perfect predators ever discovered. They have been placed in environments designed for their success, and you will be placed among them." One of the candidates, a warrior named Jin Ho from the Veshtar homeworld, growled deep in his throat. "We are ready to fight." Vel's expression didn't change. "Then you have already failed to understand. This is not a test of fighting. It is a test of survival. You will have 7 days. You will be given basic supplies: water purification tablets, a thermal blanket, and an emergency beacon. You will not be given weapons. You will not be given armor. You will not be given anything that your species does not naturally possess." The crystalline being raised a limb. "What if we wish to forfeit? Then you activate your emergency beacon, and you will be extracted within minutes. But activation means failure. Your species will not be granted council membership. You will have to wait another generation to try again." Day listened carefully. 7 days. No weapons. Emergency extraction available. He filed away each piece of information, building a mental model of what the test required. 3%, Vel said suddenly. "That is the survival rate across all species who have taken this test. 3 candidates out of every 100 make it to day 7, and of those 3, most are injured, traumatized, or barely clinging to life. In the entire history of the Predator test, no candidate has ever completed it without significant harm." The room fell silent. Even the most confident warriors seemed to shrink slightly. "You will be transported to your testing zones at dawn tomorrow," Vel continued. "Until then, You will rest in the candidate quarters. Use this time wisely. Study what little information we provide. Prepare your minds. Prepare your bodies. Prepare to face death, and choose to survive anyway. The overseer turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. You are competing only against the planet, not against each other. If all of you survive, all of you pass. If all of you fail, all of you fail. There is no prize for being the last one standing. There is only survival or death. The candidates were led to their quarters, a series of small rooms connected to a central common area. In the common area, screens showed live feeds from previous tests. Day watched for a few minutes. He saw a warrior with 6 legs running from a creature with too many teeth. He saw a flying being snatched from the air by something faster. He saw a candidate covered in natural armor, torn apart by something stronger. He turned away from the screens and went to his room. Inside, he found a datapad with information about Krell 4. The file was thin. Jungle zones, desert zones, mountain zones, ocean zones, temperature ranges, atmospheric composition, general predator classifications. Nothing specific. Nothing useful for planning. That was the point, Day realized. They wanted to see how candidates reacted to incomplete information. How they adapted. When they couldn't prepare, he lay down on the simple bed and closed his eyes. His mind went to his training on Earth, jungle survival in Southeast Asia, desert training in the Middle East, mountain operations in the Himalayas, cold weather survival in Siberia. The instructors had all said the same thing. The human body wasn't built to win fights against nature. It was built to outlast nature. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. He opened his eyes and saw a figure standing in his doorway. It was a female Queloth, but she wasn't wearing warrior gear. She wore the insignia of the Council Observation Team. Corporal Hande? She asked. Yes, I am Hana. I am one of the observers assigned to monitor the test. Day sat up. Why? Because I studied your species before you arrived. Humans are classified as persistence predators. You are the only species in the galaxy with that designation. I wanted to see what that means in person. And what do you see? Hana tilted her head, studying him with all 4 of her eyes. I see someone small. Someone weak. By galactic standards. Someone who should not survive even one day on Krell 4. Is that what you think will happen? No, Hana said slowly. I think you will surprise us. Humans always seem to surprise us. Your species discovered space travel. Before you discovered how to live peacefully with each other, you survived an ice age, a plague, and 2 world wars before you left your own planet. You are not logical. You are not predictable. And that makes you dangerous in ways we do not yet understand. Day smiled slightly. See you in 7 days then. Hana nodded and left. Day lay back down and closed his eyes again. Tomorrow, the test would begin. Tomorrow, he would be dropped into an alien jungle, filled with alien predators, designed to kill him. Tomorrow, he would need to survive using nothing but his human body and his human mind. He had never felt more ready in his life. When dawn came, the candidates were loaded into individual drop pods. Day climbed into his pod and secured the harness. Through the small window, he could see Krell 4 growing larger as they descended. Green jungle stretched as far as he could see. The pod shook violently as it hit the atmosphere. Then, with a final jarring impact, it landed. The door hissed open, and hot, humid air rushed in. Day stepped out into the jungle. The test had begun. The jungle was alive with sound. Birds that weren't really birds screamed from the canopy above. Insects that weren't really insects buzzed through the thick air. The trees grew so close together that sunlight barely reached the ground, and everything was covered in a wet green moss that made the air taste like copper. Day stood next to his drop pod and took inventory. One backpack. Inside, water purification tablets. Enough for 2 weeks. One thermal blanket. One emergency beacon. Red and heavy in his hand. He clipped the beacon to his belt but hoped he would never need to press its single button. He shouldered the backpack and looked around. The first rule of survival was simple. Find water. The second rule was equally simple. Don't die while looking for it. He started walking, not in a straight line, but in a careful pattern, always watching, always listening. The jungle floor was soft under his boots, thick with rotting vegetation. Good for tracking, bad for hiding footprints. He made note of that. After 30 minutes, he heard running water. A stream, maybe 50 feet ahead. He approached slowly, checking the ground for tracks. He found them immediately. Large paw prints. 4 toes with claw marks. Each print was the size of his head. Whatever made them was big and heavy. Day knelt down and touched the edge of one print. The soil was still damp, but not wet. Made within the last hour. He looked in the direction the tracks led, and saw nothing but dense jungle. He looked in the direction they came from, and saw the same. He filled his water bottle from the stream, added a purification tablet, and moved on. He didn't stay near the water. Predators hunted near water. The morning passed slowly. Day walked and observed. He noticed which plants the small animals avoided and which ones they ate. He noticed that the trees had a pattern to their growth, indicating where the richest soil was. He noticed that certain insects only flew at certain heights, probably avoiding something that hunted them closer to the ground. He was so focused on observation that he almost missed the sound. A low rumble, like distant thunder, but constant. Getting closer. Day stopped walking and turned in a slow circle. The sound was coming from his left. He couldn't see anything through the thick vegetation, but he could hear branches breaking. Something large was moving. Something heavy. Something fast. He ran, not in panic. In calculation. He ran perpendicular to the sound, trying to gain distance before whatever was coming reached his position. His boots splashed through shallow mud. His backpack bounced against his shoulders. Behind him, the rumbling grew louder. Then it burst from the jungle. Day caught only a glimpse as he glanced back, but it was enough. 6 legs, each one thick with muscle. A body like a panther from Earth, but twice the size. Fur that was black, with silver stripes. And a mouth full of teeth designed for one purpose: killing. The creature roared, and Day felt the sound in his chest like a physical blow. Then it started chasing him. Day ran harder. Not his top speed. Not yet. He needed to pace himself. He needed to think. The creature was faster than him on flat ground. Much faster. But the jungle wasn't flat. It was full of obstacles. He dodged left around a massive tree trunk. The creature followed, its claws tearing furrows in the bark as it made the turn. Day jumped over a fallen log. The creature smashed through it. Day ducked under a low-hanging branch. The creature had to go around. Each obstacle cost the creature more energy than it cost Day. Each turn gave him a few more seconds. Each barrier forced it to slow down. But it wasn't enough. The creature was gaining. Day's lungs burned. His legs ached. He had been running for 10 minutes, and he could hear the creature's breathing right behind him. Hot breath on the back of his neck. The smell of something that ate meat. He spotted a cluster of thick vines hanging from a tree ahead. Without slowing, he grabbed one and pulled himself up, climbing hand over hand. The creature slammed into the tree trunk below him, shaking the entire tree. Day wrapped his legs around the vine and looked down. The creature stared up at him with eyes that were too intelligent. It circled the tree once, twice, testing whether it could climb. It couldn't. Its claws were designed for running and killing, not climbing. But it didn't leave. It sat down at the base of the tree and waited. Day hung in the vine and caught his breath. His heart was pounding, his muscles were screaming, but his mind was calm. He had bought himself time. Time to think. Time to plan. He looked at the creature more carefully now. It was breathing hard. Its tongue hung out of its mouth. Its flanks were heaving. It had chased him at full speed for 10 minutes, and it was exhausted. Day, despite the burning in his lungs and the ache in his legs, knew he could keep going. Humans were built for this. Built to run when other predators had to rest. Built to outlast animals that were faster and stronger. But he couldn't stay in the tree forever, and he couldn't outrun the creature in a straight line. He needed a different approach. He looked around from his position in the canopy. The jungle stretched in every direction, a maze of green, but patterns emerged as he looked. A clearing to the north, where the trees grew thin, a rocky area to the east where the ground rose sharply, a section to the west where the vegetation grew so thick it was almost black, and to the south, he saw something interesting. Disturbed earth, large mounds, and steam rising from vents in the ground. Another predator's territory. Day climbed higher into the canopy, moving from vine to branch, from branch to tree. The creature below followed him, moving from tree to tree, always staying directly underneath. It wasn't giving up. It had committed to the hunt. Good, Day thought. That was exactly what he needed. He moved through the trees for an hour, always heading south, always keeping the creature in sight below. It followed him, panting and snarling, driven by instinct to catch prey that was running. By afternoon, Day's arms were tired from climbing, and his throat was dry despite the water he drank. But the creature below was in worse shape. It was moving slower now. Its head hung lower. Its breath came in ragged gasps. Day climbed down from the trees in a spot where the branches were thick enough to hide him from below. He dropped to the ground silently, landing in a crouch. The creature was 30 feet behind him, still following the path beneath the trees. Day snapped a branch. The sharp crack echoed through the jungle. The creature's head snapped up, and its eyes locked onto him. It growled, a sound like grinding rocks, and charged. Day ran again. But this time, he had a destination. He ran toward the disturbed earth and the steam vents. He ran toward the rocky area where something else lived. He ran with the six-legged predator right behind him, exactly as he wanted. The ground changed beneath his feet. The soft jungle floor gave way to harder packed earth. The temperature rose. The air smelled of sulfur. And ahead, Day saw what he was looking for. Coiled around a large boulder was the biggest snake he had ever seen. Its body was thicker than his torso. Its scales were the color of dried blood, and its head, triangular and massive, rose up as it sensed vibrations in the ground. Day ran directly toward it. The six-legged creature followed, too exhausted and too committed to the chase to notice the danger ahead. 20 feet from the snake, Day dove to the side, rolling behind a rock formation. The six-legged predator couldn't stop in time. It skidded into the snake's territory. The snake struck faster than Day's eyes could follow. Its jaws, wide enough to swallow the panther whole, clamped down on the creature's shoulder. The panther roared and twisted, its claws raking the snake's scales. The snake coiled around it, squeezing. Day didn't watch. He moved quietly away, circling around the battle, heading back into the deeper jungle. Behind him, the sounds of the fight echoed through the trees, roaring, hissing, the crack of breaking bones, then silence. Day kept moving until the sounds were far behind him. He found a thick tree with branches that formed a natural platform, 20 feet up. He climbed to the platform and sat with his back against the trunk. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline wearing off. He had survived day one. He had been chased by an apex predator and had escaped not by fighting it, but by using the jungle itself. By understanding that predators were territorial, that they would fight each other, that he didn't need to be the strongest, he just needed to be smarter. Far above the planet, In the observation station, Hana watched the video feed in silence. Around her, other council members were discussing what they had seen. Some were impressed, some were dismissing it as luck, but Hana knew better. She had studied humans. She had read their history. She knew about persistence hunting, about how ancient humans would chase antelope across the African plains for hours until the animals collapsed from heat exhaustion, about how humans had survived ice ages and droughts by being stubborn enough to outlast the disaster. She looked at the feed showing Day sitting in the tree, calmly drinking water and checking his supplies. He didn't look scared. He didn't look relieved. He looked focused. Interesting, Overseer Vel said, appearing beside her. No, Hana agreed. But he won anyway. He will need to do more than run for 6 more days. Hana nodded but said nothing. She had a feeling that running was only the beginning of Day's plan, and she was curious to see what came next. Day 2 began with rain. Heavy drops that pounded through the jungle canopy and turned the ground into thick mud. Day woke up in his tree, wrapped in his thermal blanket, and watched the water fall. The rain was good. It would mask his scent. It would fill streams and create puddles for drinking water. It would make most predators seek shelter and wait out the storm. Most predators. But not all. Day climbed down from his tree and started moving. He had spent the previous evening breaking branches at specific heights and disturbing certain plants. Now he wanted to see if his theory was correct. He wanted to know if the 6-legged panther had survived its fight with the snake. He found his answer after an hour of walking. Tracks in the mud. 4-toed prints with claw marks. The same prints from yesterday. But now they showed a limp. The creature was injured, but alive. And it was following Day's trail from yesterday. Day smiled. The creature was persistent. It had lost to the snake but had escaped. Now it was hunting him again. Probably angry. Definitely hungry. This kind of predator didn't give up easily. Perfect. Day continued walking, making sure to leave clear signs of his passage. A broken branch here. A footprint in soft mud there. He was leaving a trail that even an injured predator could follow. He wanted it to follow him. He needed it to keep chasing, because while he walked, he was learning. He learned which plants had thorns sharp enough to cut skin. He learned which trees had bark that peeled away easily. He learned where the ground was solid and where it would collapse under weight. He learned the sounds of different animals and which ones meant danger was close. By midday, he heard the rumbling breath behind him. The panther had caught up. But this time, Day didn't run at full speed. He ran just fast enough to stay ahead. He ran in a pattern, circling back on his own trail, crossing streams, doubling back through thick vegetation. The creature followed. Every time. Patient, determined, angry. The rain stopped in the late afternoon. Day found himself back near the area where he had started. He recognized the stream, the large trees, the soft ground. He had completed a circle. A large circle that had taken him almost 2 full days to walk. And along that circle, he had left marks, signs, information. In the observation station, Hana studied the map of Day's movements. Other observers were watching different candidates. Jin Ho, the Veshtar warrior, had built a fortified position and was fighting off waves of attackers. A crystalline being named Sung had discovered it could reflect heat and was using that ability to blind predators before escaping. A gaseous being named Yuna was floating above the danger, using wind currents to stay out of reach. Each candidate was using their natural advantages. But Day was doing something different, something that didn't make immediate sense. He is making a map, Overseer Vel said, appearing beside Hana again. The ancient being pointed at the screen, showing Day's path. He is learning the territory. But why lead the predator in circles? Hana asked. I do not know. But I suspect we will find out soon. On the ground, Day heard the emergency beacon alarm. The sound was distant, maybe 2 miles away. Someone had given up. Someone had pressed their beacon and called for extraction. He didn't know who. He didn't need to know. It just meant there was one less candidate in the test. That night, Day climbed a different tree and slept in short intervals. He never slept more than 2 hours at a time. He woke up, checked his surroundings, listened to the jungle, then slept again. It was a technique he had learned in military training. The body could function on broken sleep for days, even weeks, as long as the total hours added up. Day 3 brought clear skies and intense heat. The jungle steamed as the sun baked the moisture from the previous day's rain. Day drank water constantly, using his purification tablets to clean water from any stream he crossed. His body was sweating, cooling itself, using water as a biological air conditioning system. The panther was still following him. Day caught glimpses of it through the trees. It was moving slower now. Its injured leg was worse. Its breathing was labored. But it wouldn't stop. It had been chasing him for 3 days, burning energy, drinking when it could, but never eating. Never resting properly. Day, by contrast, was pacing himself. He ran when he needed to. He walked when he could. He rested in trees. He drank regularly. He even ate some of the edible fungi he had identified, small bitter mushrooms that gave him calories without poisoning him. 3 days of running would kill most Earth predators. A lion could sprint for maybe a minute. A wolf could run for an hour. But a human could run for days if they paced themselves, if they managed their energy, if they stayed hydrated and kept their body temperature controlled through sweating. The panther didn't sweat. It cooled itself by panting. And panting while running was inefficient. It was losing water and energy much faster than Day was. Another alarm sounded in the afternoon. Another candidate had given up. The test was now down to 6 participants from the original 12. That evening, Day found what he had been looking for. The snake's territory. The rocky area with steam vents and disturbed earth. The massive coiled predator was there, basking on a sun-warmed boulder. But Day wasn't here to fight the snake. He was here to learn about it. He circled the territory carefully, staying hidden, watching how the snake reacted to sounds and movements. He saw that it was sensitive to vibrations in the ground. He saw that it preferred to ambush prey from the right side. He saw that it was territorial but wouldn't chase prey beyond a certain boundary. More information, more data, all of it being stored in his memory. The panther caught up to him near sunset. Day saw it limping through the jungle, its silver stripes matted with dried blood from its fight with the snake. It saw Day and snarled. But the sound was weaker now, less threatening, more desperate. Day ran again. But he ran in a specific direction now. He ran along the edge of the snake's territory, close enough that his footsteps would send vibrations through the ground, but far enough that the snake wouldn't see him as an immediate threat. The panther followed, focused entirely on Day, not noticing the danger it was approaching. Day circled away at the last moment, diving behind a cluster of rocks. The panther, exhausted and single-minded, stumbled into the snake's territory. The snake struck again. But this time, the panther was too tired to fight effectively. It tried to dodge. It tried to claw. But the snake was fresh and angry and territorial. The fight was brief and brutal. When it was over, Day slipped away into the jungle. The panther was finished. The snake was feeding, and Day had eliminated the most persistent threat in his area without lifting a weapon. Day 4 passed more quietly. Without the panther chasing him, Day focused on establishing a base. He found a tree with a natural hollow, 20 feet up, hidden by thick leaves. He gathered the peeling bark from specific trees and wove it into a mat for sleeping. He found vines that produced clean water when cut. He identified 3 different types of edible plants within 100 yards of his base. He was no longer just surviving. He was beginning to thrive. In the observation station, Hannah presented her findings to a small group of senior council members. She showed them Day's path over the 3 days. She showed them how he had studied predator behaviors. She showed them how he had used the environment as a weapon. "This is not standard warrior behavior," one council member said. "No," Hana agreed. "It is not. It is something different. Something uniquely human." She pulled up files from Earth's history. Images of ancient humans tracking wounded animals across vast distances. Records of persistence hunts that lasted 2 days or more. Videos of modern ultra-marathon runners covering hundreds of miles. Humans evolved to outlast their prey, Hana explained. On Earth, most predators are faster and stronger than humans. But humans can run longer. They can track further. They can think more complexly. A human hunter would wound an animal and then follow it for days until it collapsed from exhaustion or infection. The human didn't need to be stronger. They just needed to be more persistent. "And this Day is using that strategy here," Overseer Vel said. "Yes. But he is doing more than that. He is not just outlasting predators. He is learning from them, adapting to them, using them, against each other." Another alarm sounded. Another candidate had failed. Now, there were 5 left. On the ground, Day sat in his tree hollow and reviewed his mental map. He knew where the snake lived. He knew where certain plants grew. He knew which areas were safe and which were dangerous. He knew the patrol patterns of smaller predators and the territorial boundaries of larger ones. The jungle was no longer an unknown threat. It was becoming familiar, and familiar meant survivable. He had 3 more days to go. 3 more days to prove that humans belonged in the Galactic Council. 3 more days to show that sometimes the best warrior was not the strongest or the fastest, but the smartest and the most patient. He wrapped himself in his thermal blanket and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, for the first time since landing on Krell 4, he felt confident. Not because he was winning, but because he finally understood the game. Day 5 started with a problem. Day woke to the sound of something large moving through the jungle. Not the panther. That threat was gone. This was something different. Day woke to panther, something that clicked and hissed as it moved. He peered down from his tree hollow and saw it. An insect, but the size of a horse. 6 legs, each one ending in a sharp point. Mandibles that opened and closed with mechanical precision. And eyes, so many eyes. Compound eyes that could probably see in every direction at once. The creature was directly below his tree, investigating the area. It hadn't noticed him yet, but it was testing the trunk with its front legs, as if deciding whether to climb. Day stayed perfectly still. Any movement might draw its attention. Any sound might trigger an attack. He controlled his breathing, making it slow and silent. He had learned this technique from hunting deer on Earth. Become part of the environment, become invisible through stillness. The insect spent 10 minutes examining the base of the tree. Then, apparently finding nothing interesting, it clicked away into the jungle. Day waited another 15 minutes before moving. Patience. Always patience. When he finally climbed down, he found tracks. The insect had been following his trail from the previous day. That meant it was a hunter. That meant it was intelligent enough to track prey. That meant it was dangerous in ways the panther hadn't been. Day began walking. But now he walked differently. He stepped on rocks instead of soft ground. He avoided breaking branches. He crossed streams to break his scent trail. Everything he did was designed to confuse a tracker. By midday, he heard clicking behind him. The insect had found him again. It was persistent, like the panther, but also more methodical. It wasn't chasing him in anger. It was hunting him with cold calculation. Day ran. Not in circles this time. He ran in a straight line toward a specific destination. A place he had marked in his mental map. A place where something useful grew. The plants were called devil vines in his mental notes. They grew in thick clusters and produced a sticky sap that was incredibly flammable. He had tested a small amount on day 3 and watched it burn with intense heat. Now he needed that heat. He reached the devil vine cluster and immediately started breaking stems. The sap oozed out, thick and clear. He smeared it on several trees in a line, creating a barrier of sap-covered bark. Then he used his last match, saved from his supply kit, and lit one tree. The sap ignited instantly. Flames spread from tree to tree, creating a wall of fire. The heat was intense, driving Day back. But it would drive the insect back further. Insects were primitive. Fire was their ancient enemy. The clicking stopped. Day heard the insect retreating, its legs scraping against bark as it backed away from the flames. He used the opportunity to run in a different direction, putting distance between himself and the threat. But fire in the jungle was dangerous. Day knew that. He had created it out of necessity, but now he needed to make sure it didn't spread out of control. He circled back, staying far from the flames, and watched. The devil vine sap burned hot but fast. Within 20 minutes, the fire had consumed the sap and was dying. The surrounding vegetation was too wet from the jungle humidity to catch easily. The fire burned itself out, leaving a charred barrier, but no spreading inferno. Day nodded in satisfaction. Problem solved. Threat eliminated. And he had learned something new. Fire was a tool he could use if necessary. In the observation station, alarms were ringing. Council members rushed to screens, checking data. The fire in Day's zone had triggered safety protocols. Automated systems were monitoring for dangerous spread. Vel appeared, looking concerned. "The human started a fire," one observer said. "I saw," Vel replied. "Was it accidental?" Hana reviewed the footage. "No. He did it deliberately. He used local plants as fuel to create a barrier against an insect predator. That shows advanced environmental knowledge," another council member noted. "He has only been on the planet for 5 days. Yet he knows which plants are flammable. He has been studying," Hana said. "Every moment he is not running or sleeping. He is observing, testing, learning. Humans are adaptable. This day is showing us exactly what that means." 2 more alarms sounded that afternoon. 2 more candidates had failed. Jinho, the Veshtar warrior, had been overwhelmed by a pack of coordinated predators. Sung, the crystalline being, had shattered beyond self-repair. That left only 3 candidates. Day, Yuna, the gaseous being, and one more, whose name Hana couldn't remember. On the ground, Day was building. He had survived the major threats. The panther was gone. The insect was gone. Now he could focus on the last 2 days. And he could make those days comfortable. He used stripped bark to create a rain catch system that funneled water into a natural depression in his tree. He wove smaller vines into a hammock that would be more comfortable than sleeping on bare wood. He even found a type of leaf that, when crushed, produced an oil that kept away smaller insects. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living. Day 6 was almost peaceful. Day spent the morning harvesting edible plants and storing them in his tree base. He spent the afternoon reinforcing his hammock and improving his rain catch system. He saw several small predators, but they ignored him. He was no longer acting like prey. He was acting like he belonged in the jungle. That evening, he heard a sound he hadn't heard before. A low humming that vibrated through the trees. He looked up and saw Yuna, the gaseous being, floating above the canopy. Yuna was glowing slightly, using bioluminescence to see in the growing darkness. They made eye contact. Yuna drifted lower, hovering near Day's tree. They couldn't speak. Different species, different communication methods, but Yuna gestured at Day's tree base, then at the jungle around them. The meaning was clear. "You did well," Day nodded. Yuna drifted away, back up into the sky. 2 candidates, both succeeding, both using their unique advantages. No competition, No conflict. Just survival. The last alarm sounded just after midnight. The final candidate besides Day and Yuna had failed. Now there were two. Day 7 arrived with golden sunlight and the sound of birds. Day woke up, feeling rested. His body was sore, covered in small scratches and bruises, but functional. His mind was sharp. He had water. He had food. He had shelter. He had survived. The day passed slowly. Day stayed near his base, not taking unnecessary risks. He saw a few predators in the distance, but none came close. The jungle had accepted him as part of its ecosystem. As the sun began to set, Day climbed to the highest branch of his tree. From there, he could see the sky turning orange and purple. Somewhere above the clouds, the observation station was watching. Somewhere in that station, people were deciding whether he had passed the test, but Day already knew the answer. He had survived 7 days using nothing but his human body and his human mind. He had outrun predators that were faster. He had outsmarted predators that were stronger. He had adapted to an alien jungle using techniques learned from Earth jungles thousands of light years away. He had proven that humans belonged. A light appeared in the sky. Then another. Extraction ships, coming for the candidates. One ship descended toward Day's position. It hovered above the canopy, and a platform lowered on cables. Day climbed onto the platform. As it lifted him up toward the ship, he took one last look at the jungle. The place that had tried to kill him. The place that had taught him. The place where he had proven himself. The platform entered the ship, and the door closed behind him. Inside, medical personnel waited to examine him, but Day waved them off. He wasn't injured. Not seriously. He was tired and dirty and hungry. But he was whole. The ship rose through the atmosphere, and Day watched through a window as Krell 4 grew smaller. He had arrived as a candidate. He was leaving as something more. A survivor. A warrior. A human who had shown the galaxy what his species could do. In the observation station, Hana watched the extraction feeds. Day's vital signs were strong. Yuna was also being extracted successfully. 2 candidates had passed the predator test. More importantly, one of them was human. "I need to review his complete performance data," Vel said. This was unusual. He did not fight like other species. No, Hana agreed. He fought like a human, and that made all the difference. The council chamber was enormous. Thousands of seats arranged in circular tiers, each one occupied by a representative from a different world. The chamber had been carved from a single asteroid, and the ceiling showed the stars beyond. A reminder that this council governed an entire galaxy. Day stood in the center of the chamber floor. He had been cleaned, medically examined, and given proper clothes. But he still felt small standing before so many alien beings. Beside him, also in the center, floated Yuna. The gaseous being pulsed with soft light, the only sign of nervousness. Overseer Vel stood at a raised platform, visible to all. The ancient being's voice filled the chamber without need for amplification. "We are gathered to judge the predator test candidates. 2 survived the 7 days. 2 have earned the right to be heard by this council." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. 2 survivors was unusual. Most tests had 0 or 1. 2 meant something special had happened. "We will begin with Yuna of the Seraph homeworld." Yuna floated higher, glowing brighter. Vel activated a holographic display that showed Yuna's 7 days on Krell 4. The gaseous being had used wind currents to stay above the ground, never landing, never being vulnerable to ground-based predators. When flying predators attacked, Yuna had used their ability to disperse into a cloud, becoming too scattered to catch. Yuna used their natural form to avoid danger, Vel announced. They survived by being uncatchable. The council recognizes this as a valid survival strategy. Applause echoed through the chamber. Not enthusiastic, but respectful. Yuna had done well. They had used their advantages correctly. Now we turn to Hyundai of Earth. The holographic display changed. It showed Day stepping out of his drop pod into the jungle. Then it showed the panther chasing him. Then days of running. Then the fight between the panther and the snake. Then the insect tracker. Then the fire. The chamber fell silent as they watched. This was different from Yuna's test. This was active, strategic, violent, without Day himself being violent. When the footage ended, Vel turned to address the council. The human did not avoid danger. He redirected it. He made predators fight each other. He used the environment as a weapon. He adapted and learned at a rate we have never observed in a test candidate. One council member stood up, a massive reptilian being with scales like armor. But he did not fight. Is this test not meant to judge warrior capability? The test judges survival. Vel corrected. Combat is one path to survival. But it is not the only path. Another council member rose, this one insectoid with multiple limbs. I have reviewed the data. The human studied over 50 different plant species during his test. He mapped territorial boundaries of 7 different predator types. He created fire, built shelter, and established a sustainable food source. This goes beyond survival. This is colonization behavior. Murmurs grew louder. Colonization. That word carried weight. It meant a species that could adapt to new environments. A species that could spread across different worlds. Hana stood from her seat in the observation section. May I speak? Vel gestured for permission. Hana descended to the chamber floor, standing near Day. She activated her own data display. I have studied humans extensively, she began. Their evolutionary history is unique in the galaxy. They evolved on a planet with extreme climate variation. Ice ages and heat waves. Droughts and floods. Megafauna predators and microscopic diseases. Humans survived all of it not by being the strongest, but by being the most adaptable. She showed images from Earth. Early humans tracking animals across grasslands. Ancient humans surviving in frozen tundra. Modern humans living in deserts, jungles, mountains, and even underwater cities. Humans are persistence predators, Hana continued. They evolved to run their prey to exhaustion. But more than that, they evolved to think, to plan, to use tools and strategy. Han Day did not fight the panther because fighting was inefficient. He made the panther fight the snake because that was the optimal solution. A council member from a crystalline species spoke up. This makes humans sound dangerous. If they can adapt so quickly, if they can turn environments against established predators, what happens when they enter council space? Will they colonize our worlds? Will they outcompete our own species? The chamber erupted in debate. Some agreed with the concern. Others argued humans could be valuable allies precisely because of their adaptability. The noise grew until Vel raised a hand for silence. Han Day of Earth, Vel said. You have heard our concerns. Speak. Tell us why we should trust your species. Day had been silent throughout the proceedings, listening and learning, just as he had in the jungle. Now he stepped forward. I cannot promise you that humans are not dangerous, he said. You would not have survived to build starships if you were not dangerous. The question is not whether we are dangerous. The question is whether we can be trusted. He paused, looking around at the thousands of faces watching him. On Earth, we have a saying. We do not trust people because they are perfect. We trust people because they keep their word. Humanity wants to join the Galactic Council because we believe in what it represents. Peace, cooperation, learning from each other instead of destroying each other. He gestured at the holographic display showing his test. You saw me on Krell 4. I did not fight predators when I could avoid them. I did not kill when I could redirect. I survived. Yes, but I survived without unnecessary violence. That is what humans can offer. We can adapt. We can solve problems. And we can choose mercy when others might choose cruelty. Another council member stood. You made predators kill each other. How is that mercy? 80. Because those predators were trying to kill me, Day replied. I defended myself using the most efficient method available. If I had fought them directly, either they would have died or I would have died. By making them fight each other, I gave them a chance to survive. The snake is still alive. It won its territorial battle and remained in its home. I merely ensured that I was not the loser in that equation. Vel studied Day for a long moment. You speak of efficiency, of optimal solutions. This suggests a cold calculation. Where is the honor in that? Where is the warrior's spirit? Day smiled slightly. With respect, Overseer, I think you are asking the wrong question. You assume that warrior spirit requires face-to-face combat. But on Earth, our greatest warriors were not always the strongest fighters. They were the strategists. The generals who won battles without bloodshed, the leaders who protected their people by being smart instead of being brutal. He pointed at the display again. I spent 7 days on Krell 4. I could have activated my beacon on day 1 and gone home. I could have hidden in a tree for 7 days and called it survival. Instead, I learned. I adapted. I built a home in an alien jungle. That is warrior spirit. Not the courage to fight, but the courage to learn. The strength to admit you do not know everything and then do something about it. The chamber was silent now. Every eye was on Day. Hana felt a strange emotion. Pride. She was proud of this small human who stood before the most powerful beings in the galaxy and spoke truth without fear. Vel turned to the council. We must vote. The question before us is not just whether these candidates pass the test. The question is whether their species deserve full council membership. Yuna has proven the Seraph are worthy. That vote is clear. But humanity is the question. Do we accept a species that survives through adaptation and intelligence, rather than natural superiority? The vote took an hour. Council members debated. Data was reviewed. Comparisons were made to other species who had taken the test. Finally, Vel called for the official vote. All in favor of granting humanity full council membership? Lights began appearing across the chamber. Blue lights, indicating votes in favor. One by one, thousands of blue lights filled the space. Hana held her breath, counting. When the final vote was tallied, Vel announced the result. The vote is unanimous. Humanity is granted full council membership. The chamber erupted in applause. Not the polite applause Yuna had received, but genuine enthusiasm. Day stood in the center of it all, looking overwhelmed. Vel descended from the platform and approached Day. You did something no candidate has ever done. You completed the predator test with minimal injury. You solved problems we did not think could be solved. You earned a perfect score. A perfect score? Day asked. Yes. We measure candidates on survival, adaptability, mental stability, and strategic thinking. Most candidates score high in 1 or 2 areas. You scored perfectly in all 4. You are the first in 10,000 years to achieve this. Day bowed slightly. I had good teachers. Earth is a harsh world. It taught us well. As the ceremony concluded and council members began filing out, Hana approached Day. Congratulations. You have changed how the galaxy sees humanity. No, Day said. I just showed them what humans can do when we try. The real work starts now. Living up to their expectations. Do you think humanity can do that? Can you really be trusted? Day looked at her seriously. I do not know. But I know we will try. And humans are very good at trying. We are persistent like that. Hana laughed. It was a strange sound. Her species' version of joy. Yes, you are. That is what worries us and excites us at the same time. Later, on the transport back to Earth, Day sat alone and reviewed everything that had happened. He had been sent as a test candidate. He was returning as a representative of his entire species. The weight of that responsibility was enormous. But he thought about the jungle, about running from the panther, about learning the environment, about adapting to survive. And he realized that this was just another challenge. A bigger jungle, more dangerous predators. But the same basic principle: learn, adapt, survive, thrive. Humans had been doing it for millions of years on Earth. Now they would do it across the galaxy. The transport entered Earth's atmosphere. Through the window, Day could see his home planet. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. It looked so small from space, but he knew it was big enough to have produced a species that could survive anywhere, even in a galaxy that had doubted them, even in a test designed to break them. The human who used a jungle trick had passed, and in doing so, he had opened the stars for all of humanity. The future was uncertain, but Day was not worried. Humans were adaptable, and that was the greatest advantage any species could have.